The UK-based Financial Times published an insightful piece titled "China is Suffering Its Own China Shock." China, once the world's leading hub for low-cost manufacturing, is now experiencing its own version of the so-called China shock, a phenomenon it once imposed on developed economies. This shift is bringing an end to the China we have known, a nation built on cheap manufacturing. As the country transitions toward automation and higher-end production, millions of jobs in labor-intensive industries are disappearing, posing significant challenges to economic stability and social cohesion. In the early 2000s, China leveraged its abundant cheap labor to dominate global manufacturing, particularly in industries such as textiles, footwear, and basic electronics. The country's efficient supply chains, supportive government policies, and low operational costs made it the world's factory. However, rising wages, increasing competition from countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, and India, and geopolitical tensions, including trade restrictions from the United States, have eroded China's competitive advantage. China's share of global footwear exports has declined by 10 percentage points over the past decade, with countries like Vietnam and Indonesia absorbing the lost market share. Similar trends are observed in other labor-intensive industries such as apparel, toys, and furniture. Small and medium-sized manufacturers across China now face a critical choice: invest in automation or risk obsolescence. A study of 12 labor-intensive industries found that employment shrank by nearly 4 million jobs between 2011 and 2019, with an additional 3.4 million jobs lost between 2019 and 2023. In the textile industry alone, employment plummeted by 40% over the past decade. Many factories that once flourished in China's Pearl River Delta and Yangtze River Delta regions are shutting down or relocating operations to cheaper destinations like Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Cambodia. Beijing is responding by promoting advanced manufacturing and high-tech industries. However, while these sectors drive economic growth, they require far fewer workers, exacerbating the displacement of low-skilled employees. Frederick Newman, chief Asia economist at HSBC, notes, China's comparative advantage in cheap labor is over, and its transition to high-technology production will not create enough jobs to compensate for those lost. The push for high-end manufacturing, such as electric vehicles, robotics, and semiconductor production, trends as capital-intensive and does not generate as many jobs as traditional factory work. Meanwhile, China still has tens of millions of poorly educated, low-skilled workers who need jobs. China's leadership under General Secretary Xi Jinping has emphasized new quality productive forces as a means of sustaining economic growth. Policymakers hope that high-tech investments will not only replace lost manufacturing jobs, but also drive domestic consumption and innovation. However, some analysts remain skeptical about whether these measures will be sufficient to prevent widespread unemployment. The move toward automation, coupled with demographic challenges, is making it increasingly difficult for China to sustain job creation at the same pace as in previous decades. Unlike Western nations, which responded to deindustrialization by expanding their service economies, China faces unique challenges due to its demographic decline and the reluctance of younger, more educated workers to enter manufacturing jobs. Most concerning for Beijing, labor unrest is already on the rise. The China Labour Bulletin recorded 452 major protests in the manufacturing sector last year alone, the highest in nearly a decade. These disruptions, driven by factory closures, wage arrears, and company relocations, highlight the growing social pressures accompanying economic transformation. The increasing number of labor disputes suggests that many workers are struggling to adapt to the rapid economic shift, with many older and less skilled workers unable to transition to new industries. Essentially, China is experiencing deindustrialization and its disruptive effects on working-class citizens. However, unlike developed economies, China will be undergoing this transition on a vastly greater scale and without the wealth to cushion the impact. As China moves forward, the challenge will be balancing technological progress with the need for job creation. If left unaddressed, the decline in low-end manufacturing could lead to broader social instability, echoing the disruptions seen in Western economies during their own periods of industrial decline. The government's ability to manage this transition will play a crucial role in shaping China's economic future. Failure to do so could result in widespread discontent or worse. U.S.-China, PRC export control loopholes closed. On Tuesday, the U.S. Department of Commerce significantly expanded its export restrictions, adding 80 entities across China, the United Arab Emirates, South Africa, Iran, and other countries to its entity list. This move, the first major China-related export control action under President Trump's new administration, aims to close loopholes that have allowed Chinese firms to bypass previous restrictions on advanced technology exports. The new sanctions target Chinese companies involved in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and hypersonic weapons development. Among them are Netrix Information Industry, Beijing Academy of Artificial Intelligence, and Beijing Innovation Wisdom Technology Co. Netrix was the subject of a 2024 New York Times investigation that revealed its connections to Sugan, a previously blacklisted firm, and its efforts to acquire AI-related hardware despite U.S. sanctions. The Commerce Department also closed gaps in restrictions against Inspur Group, a major supplier of AI-capable servers to the Chinese military. While Inspur NSP was placed on the Entity List in 2023, its subsidiaries continued purchasing U.S. chips from Intel and NVIDIA. The latest action extends the Foreign Direct Product Rule (FDPR) to these subsidiaries, effectively cutting them off from U.S. technology. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick emphasized, "The U.S. will not allow adversaries to exploit American technology to bolster their militaries and threaten American lives." India-China, trade and investment restrictions. India is reportedly evaluating a relaxation of some trade and investment restrictions imposed on China following the 2020 Galwan Valley clashes. According to the India-based Indian Express, government departments are engaging in discussions to dilute or neutralize certain restrictions, potentially allowing Chinese firms to re-enter sectors where they were previously barred. This move is seen as part of India's broader strategy to hedge against potential disruptions from new U.S. policies. Proposed measures include easing visa restrictions for Chinese business personnel, lifting specific tariffs and non-tariff barriers on imports, and even reconsidering the ban on certain Chinese mobile applications. Meanwhile, diplomatic engagement between India and China has intensified. The Times of India reports that the two nations recently held talks in Beijing, described as positive and constructive by India's Ministry of External Affairs. These discussions reviewed the border situation and explored mechanisms to prevent escalation along the line of actual control. While no formal policy changes have been announced, ongoing discussions suggest a pragmatic recalibration of India's approach, balancing geopolitical concerns with economic considerations.